afternoon. I'm so glad to be here this afternoon. Just like Pastor Blessing said, standing here and looking at all of you, I think this is just, not dream come true, but a vision come true. Yeah, but I will not go there. And like Pastor David said, I'm not wearing a chef hat today, and you're not cooking. But, okay, let me start with saying this. How many of you are thinking कि अपना टाइम कब आएगा और किसका किसका टाइम आ गया, right? How many of you are in business? Fantastic. How many of you are in corporate or a job or a work setting? Super. How many of you are aspiring entrepreneurs or aspiring professionals? So we have people from all these three segments. How many of you want to advance in the field you are? Almost every hand goes up. How do we do that? And any growth happens in the future, right? It is not now. Every second which passes is the future. And whether to advance in the kingdom, whether to advance in the business, whether to advance in your workplace, what I'm going to talk today about how to raise your future, how to raise a number two, how to raise a successor. Because God's plan is always multi-generational. It is not limited to one generation, and it is not limited to you. And what happens is when God gives us a vision, we often just focus on the vision, and we don't focus on what the vision needs to get it fulfillment. All right? So, if the vision has to go forward, you need someone with you in your business or at your workplace who just not carries your heart, but he carries your values, he or she, or they carry God's purpose beyond your time, right? Now, I learned this very early on. Let me give you a personal story. In 2011, I used to work with Hard Rock Cafe in Pune, and I had completed around 2 years. And one day I was sitting with my boss, and I said, "Boss, what's next for me? It's been 2 years. I'm leading the kitchen. We're doing good. What next for me?" His question to me was, "Who is going to replace you?" And I'd never thought that question. And very plainly, like we say at work, my second in command, my sous chef will replace me. My boss asked me second question, is that guy able to do 95% of what you do? And is that guy capable enough that once you move, that he's going to do better than you? And I just felt silent because I had never thought that way at work. And then I was thinking, and then he said one sentence. He said, Amey, if you want to grow, you need to raise someone, make ready to take your place exactly as you do, and who can do it better than you. And then I went home, and I started to think what he said, because I didn't want to stay where I was. I wanted to grow. But who will fill my position? I went home, and I chose 2 team members from my team, and they were not exactly the second in command. They were maybe in the 3rd or 4th line of command. I chose them, and for next 6 months, I poured myself into them. Everything I knew about what Hard Rock taught me, every recipe, every standard, every specification. And I didn't stop there. I also learned a few other things. And I taught them all. I don't know I think there's one chef who's sitting here, but I think most of the business owners will resonate. A lot of times we say that we are passionate and we want to give long hours to work. We think if I am not there at the work will stop. And that happens with we chefs a lot. We don't leave the kitchen until we feel that it's done. There is something called a pass in kitchen, where every dish gets placed once it is made. Only once the chef checks everything, the taste, color, texture, and when she's satisfied, the dish goes out. And a lot of time we give it a tag of passion. But I realized internally it was not passion. It was fear. Fear of things going wrong. It was not my passion. It was fear of my boss screwing me. It was fear of a customer complaint. It was not passion. As I was pouring my life and my talent into these two boys, few things started to change. I started to go home on time because I started to build confidence that these two can do what I'm doing. That's the first thing happened. The second thing happened is that they started to take charge, right? And the third thing is, as on today, both of them have almost corporate chefs. And as we speak right now, one of them is traveling to Germany to represent India in the company he works. So that's what happens once you start raising people in your businesses, right? Now, what's the urgency of this succession? Like I said, every move of God is meant to outlive the leader. And a lot of times we think that, one of the biggest failures we can make as leaders is assuming that we are irreplaceable. Yeah? But God works never stops like that with one man or one woman. Your greatest success is not what you achieve, but who you raise. And God thinks generationally. It's not about what you achieve, it's about who you raise. And we're going to look at a few examples from the Bible of this succession plan. The first one, Moses to Joshua. I'm not reading the scripture passage, but you can refer to it later. Numbers 27, verse 18 to 23. What happens? God himself chose Joshua to succeed Moses. Right? What did Moses do? Moses trained him for 40 years. Joshua didn't get into that leadership position till he was well trained. Two more things to look at. He equipped him privately, and he gave public affirmation. So Moses to Joshua. Joshua followed Moses for 40 years, and only when he was ready, he was given the position. The second example from the Bible is Elijah to Elisha. What did Elisha do? He asked for a double portion. But you know what in reality he did? He followed that man to the end. And like, Brother Chris said, the way Zig Ziglar treated him, he groaned Brother Chris with him. And he followed him, even to places where he had to tie his shoelace or even when he had to take him to a bathroom, right? But in return, what happened? When the mantle fell, Elisha just didn't receive the double portion. He just didn't receive the power. He inherited the mission. Now, what I'm saying this is, there might be dreams and visions which God has shown you. You might not know when it will happen, but remember, it might not get fulfilled through you. It will get fulfilled through people who come ahead of you and who you raise. Are we raising people to inherit just a platform, or are we raising people for a purpose? And like I said, I learned that early on. When I decided to quit my last full-time job, when I was heading a brand which claims the world's favorite biryani, and I was heading all the 48 restaurants across the country, handling a tune of 380 crores. When I told my boss I want to move out, he didn't have to ask me that question, who is going to replace you? Because I'd made sure that I trained someone who could do better than me. And that guy went on to serve the same company for another 3 years, right? They didn't have to suffer. When I left at 48 restaurants, when Krish, who was taking the charge from me, it went on to 83. So the company kept growing, right? So he didn't just inherit the position, he inherited my mission of growth. The next one, I think nothing gets bigger than this, is Jesus chose his disciples, right? One man, and today half of the world somehow believes in him. But did he do it on his own? No. He chose 12 team members to do that for him. Yeah? Now, the critical part to look here is how he chose those 12. Were they perfect? Were they, like Chris sir said, were they the gold medalist in their particular fields? No. They were all simple, ordinary men who failed, who doubted, who did mistakes. But what did Jesus do? For those 3 years, he just poured his life into these 12 men. And then what happened? That they carried his work forward. If he did not choose those 12 men, maybe all of us would not be sitting here, right? And that's what succession and raising a number 2 means. You know, a great example of this in today's world, if you want to check, is a company called Apple, right? The world's most valued company. I think 90% of us sitting here might be using one of their products. When Steve Jobs decided to move out, he had raised Tim Cook to take the reins. And what did Tim Cook do? He took Apple to the most valued company on the planet Earth, right? So, Jesus' example is the grace-based leadership, and what that does is deep discipleship and delegation. And I think just take 2 minutes and think, what are you doing on these terms? And the last example I will take is Paul to Timothy, right? I think even Brother Krish mentioned about him, and Pastor Blesson also, I think, mentioned about him. I'm again not reading the verse, but what did Paul tell Timothy? He said, entrust whatever you have and whatever you've learned to the men who are following you, and teach others. That's what it says in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. And that's 4 generations, right? Paul to Timothy, Timothy to faithful men and others. True legacy always thinks beyond the immediate. The business you are in, the work you are doing, is it for immediate or it is for generations, right? Now, what happens if you don't have a number 2? When there is no number 2, bad thing happens. There is confusion, there is no one to continue to work, there is no one to protect the vision, and no one to bear the burden, right? So not having a number 2 is a major, major challenge. And God always thinks in lineage, not just what you're doing, but who you are raising. Now, how do you identify who could be a great successor or a number 2 for your business? Is there some 5 traits, right? The first one is faithful in little. The second one, loyal in silence. The third one, teachable, not entitled. The fourth one, spiritually mature. And the fifth one, has your heart. And take 2 minutes, all of you have a pad and a pencil. And whatever you are in your business or workplace today, identify at least 3 people who have these characteristics right now. Let's do that exercise. Write down 3 people who you think in your team have these traits. Now, I truly believe a lot of businesses don't see the growth or the prosperity or the scale they can see if they really start to invest on number 2s, the successors. And then it has to flow down. Once you've written the 3 names, just raise your hand so I know that I can move ahead. You know, we don't need just talent. We need alignment. And that's what kingdom alignment is. You know, when God gives us visions and when He gives us plans, He's also looking at these traits in us. Because He's made all of us with some purpose. He wants us to carry His purpose ahead. And He's looking for all these traits. Now, these are the traits. But how to identify a potential successor? And I think what Brother Chris said, nothing more beautiful than that. The first point, look for fruit, not just for fire. You know, a lot of time what happens, and I'll give you a very real story. When we start looking at people who could take our place, we look at people who are very energetic, we look at people who have charisma, maybe we look at people who just are too smart, yeah? But we don't need someone who just has a fire. We need someone who has the fruit, right? The second, observe consistency and humility. How they treat others, how consistent they are at their work. That's very important. And that you cannot observe in a month or a week. It takes time. It takes at least 6 months to 1 year to observe these qualities. The third one, test loyalty and commitment. Actually do that. Test how committed they are. Test how loyal they are. Because if he or she, whoever that is, if he's going to take your business ahead, you know, has to be tested. As on today, I run 2 verticals. One is my consulting and one is my equipment business. And there are times when we sell equipments, we get some cash. Now there's one chef who I'm nurturing with me in my equipment business. Once there was a customer who gave us some cash for equipment, and I didn't have time to go to the bank. I said, it's a good time to test this guy. So I took that 50,000 bucks cash, gave it to him, and I said, whenever I need, give it to me. And he got scared, no, I can't handle so much of money. I said, no, you need to keep it. And I didn't take that 50,000 from him for next 3 months. And I would randomly ask him, paise hai? Ah, yes, chef hai. So test their loyalty, test their commitment, right? And the last is seek confirmation through prayer. I think that's what Jesus did. And how many times we actually bring prayer in business or at work, yeah? How many times when we are taking interviews, or how many times when we are doing appraisals at our organizations, how many times when we are planning to promote someone, how many times we really take time, and at least all of us have that advantage that we have the access to Holy Spirit 24/7. How many times we actually sit down, pray about a person, wait to hear from the Holy Spirit, and decide whether to go ahead or no. And I think only if we could do that, 50% of human resource issues in companies would get solved. Because you would hear very clearly, yes or no. You would hear very clearly whether to promote this person or no, whether he is the right or she is the right person or no, right? Now, we have looked at the traits, we have looked at how to identify a potential successor. What's the next step? Investing in your number 2. And I think Brother Krish completely hijacked that topic in the morning when he shared about how he was invested by his mentor in his life. And a lot of people miss that. A lot of people miss investing in people. And I again go back to my hard rock days. On the same similar day when I was talking to my boss about my growth, he taught me how to invest in people's life. As simple as that, he told me one example. He said, next time your second in command comes and asks you for a leave which is not planned, give it to him. I said, why? He has to plan the leave, he has to apply, he has to take approval and then take a leave. He said, no, just grant the leave. I said, what will happen? He said, because you will grant that unplanned leave to him, you have invested something in his account. And next time when you want to go half day early, you just have to call him and say, I'm going, be there. And he will not deny. It starts from there, as simple as that, investing in people. But when you're about to invest in someone who's going to carry your legacy, your work, your company, your business forward, it is much more than that. It is spending time. And I just can't, emphasize more on that aspect of spending time. For last, say around 15 years, I've been mentoring a lot of people, but I never had a mentor for me. And then one fine day I went to one person I knew and said, can you be my mentor? And to my surprise, he said yes, because I was very scared. I thought he would not say yes to me. And then I see how he spends his time with me. Whenever there is an opportunity, he spends time. And he is doing almost exactly the same things what Zig Ziglar did with Brother Krish. Though I might not be his successor, but he's still mentoring me in different things. He spends time, he exposes me to things which I don't know. He actually expands my mindset to think, because all of us comes with limited thought process. When people who mentor you, and they are much bigger than you, they've seen the world more than you, they'll just ignite that expansion in you. So spend time, not just tasks. Model your walk. Oh man. There's one person sitting here in this room, which I'm immensely inspired by. As a young Hindu boy, when I walked into Ahmedabad, when I was just about to know God, who Jesus is, we found a church in Ahmedabad called Grace Fellowship of God. And me and my wife walked in. The way we were welcomed was very different. But not going there, I think second or third Sunday, I met Pastor Blesson. And he just happened to ask me, oh, what do you do? I said, I'm a chef. Where do you stay? I stay in Motera. Okay, my office is very nearby. Why don't you come? We'll just spend some time. And I did not know who he was. I was just in my journey of thinking about all my upbringing of Hinduism and then knowing Jesus. And I told him, my weekly off is on a Monday, I'm a chef. He's like, yeah, no problem. My office is nearby, come over on a Monday. And like a fool, I went, right? And for next 2.5 months, every Monday morning, I screwed his mornings, asking all nonsense questions. What about dinosaur? What about all these gods? What about all these billionaires and all that and all that? And he, without a frown, without looking at his watch, he kept answering all those silly questions for 2.5 months. Then one day I know who he is. There's a company called Marini and Fayat, who are world's one of biggest manufacturers of road building equipment. And this man happened to be the CEO, not just for India, but for entire Southeast Asia. And then I cursed myself. I said, what have you done with his Monday mornings? Because if someone comes to my office on Monday morning, unannounced, every 5 minutes I'm looking, hey, jao. But model your walk, not just your work. Every single time when I'm feeling down or I think, sometimes work gets too much, I just look at him. Running so many churches, now running his own business, and doing so much more. So model your walk, not just your work. The third thing, let them fail safely. I think doesn't get better than that. If they have to grow, they will never grow without failing. As simple as, again, all real stuff. Doing this conference, someone trusted us with handling this. Yeah? We might not have done everything perfect. We might have failed at multiple places. But they created that safe space where we can fail and still not be judged, and then able to bring out the best from us. So let them fail safely. Don't judge them when they fail, because if they judge when they fail, they'll go in the cocoon. They'll not flourish. The fifth one, give room to lead gradually. Again, what Brother Chris said. After spending so many years with Brother Ziegler, slowly he started bringing him out and said, now he's my boy. He's going to take my legacy forward. But again, don't do it hastily. Don't do it too delayed, but do it gradually. Like even the guy who I'm nurturing right now for my business, slowly I'm bringing him to places where earlier I would go when I would discuss financials or when I'm discussing about quotations with customers. I'm bringing him slowly in. Maybe not as large companies, but I'm trying to practice that. And the last, share spiritual victories and vulnerabilities. And the last one is very important because every one of us will have some vulnerabilities, and that is where real growth happens. Are we comfortable sharing those with someone who are we going to trust to take our business forward? I don't know all of you exactly what businesses you do, but you know yourself that you alone cannot do. What if you had 4 more hands to do exactly what you do, the kind of growth you have? So that is investing in your number 2. What comes next? Releasing and commissioning. Deuteronomy 31:7-8. I'm not reading the passage, but you can refer to it later. Publicly affirm them. Again, Brother Chris took my thunder in the morning, right? When they were meeting with the football star, what did he do? He called Brother Chris and said, meet him, he's my future, he's my boy. So affirm them publicly. At the same time, bless them spiritually. Again, exactly what he spoke in the morning. I don't know how Holy Spirit works. We didn't discuss our messages, but on the similar lines. Bless them spiritually. And that's so important. That when you start investing that time, ask them to invest. I'll tell you what. Sometimes the successor will ask. Sometimes they will not ask. If they ask to do that, very good. If they're not asking, take a step, because ultimately they're going to carry your work forward. So bless them spiritually and step aside when the time comes. And the biggest example of this is in the Bible. When Jesus said, now my time has come, I'm going. Why? Because I am sending you a helper. What's the difference? He stepped aside knowing that he, in his human form, could not be with all 8 billion people today. He needed someone else to come who could be with all the 8 billion people today. And he gladly stepped aside. He said, now someone else is coming. And that's so important. Sometimes letting go is a very hard thing. And I know this personally also, because the moment we start to let loose, we think, now our time is come. I will lose control, I will lose everything, but no. Letting go is not losing, it's actually launching, right? So it is very important that once you've done all this, that you take time and then step aside when the right time comes. What's Jesus' model? Ministry through multiplication, right? This one verse is every single day catches my attention. He said, you will do greater works than I did. And those 12 people and then us. Can we name one person who's healed more people than how much Jesus must have healed? Can we name one person who's maybe raised more deads than how much what he did? How many of us have done bigger things than what Jesus did? Now, if he said this verse, he meant it. Or he was a fool, right? And he was not a fool. He meant it. And that's the idea of multiplication, that if all of us truly take this verse to our heart and say, we have the capacity, like what Pastor Blesson said, we have the royal DNA, the DNA for reign. We can do things larger than Jesus did. And that's a sign of a great leader. He didn't say, I have done all great things, now you enjoy. He said, you will do greater things than I did, right? And he trusted those immature disciples to do what he wanted to do. And today, 50% of the world knows him, right? The challenge of letting go continues. Most leaders struggle there. It is hard to release control, but it is vital to secure the vision, right? Extremely vital to secure the vision. If you don't step back, your successor may never step up. And if that doesn't happen, things will not work. I'll tell you another story. Recently, I got a call from one of the most highly valued food companies in India, right? And I never expected they'll call me. And they called me and said, we want you to come to our headquarters in Nagpur, and we need to talk to you. And this was not the owner who started the company. This is the second generation. So I went to Nagpur, I met them, and finally I'll be doing some work with them. But if his father did not step aside and brought his son in, and the vision he's carrying forward from his father would not happen. Their vision is why there cannot be any company like McD's or Starbucks from India. So his father had to step aside, right? So if you don't step back, your successor may never step up. Your legacy is a person, it's not a position. Take that. Take a time and take that. Ask this question, who can carry my spirit and who will multiply my vision? Legacy is not what we are remembered for. Legacy is what continues after we go. I'll repeat that. Legacy is not what we are remembered for. Legacy is what continues after we are gone. Right? Do you have anyone in your head right now who could do that for you? For your company, for your business, at your workplace? Some questions to answer, and I would really urge all of you to actually write this down. Who are you investing in? Are they aligned with your values? Have you prayed over them? And what holds you back from releasing them? Someone might say, I have a very small business. I don't have any team members. Bring someone in. Because only when you bring someone in, he'll take half of your load so that you can expand your business. Don't limit. What's the call to action? Pray for discernment. How many of you are already mentoring someone? Only maybe 3-4%. Begin mentoring today. Just don't think that I'm no good to mentor someone. No. All of us have something very specific which we can impart in people's life. Start mentoring today. And commission them when the right time comes. Extremely important. How many of you are getting mentored by someone right now? All right. People who are already getting mentored, you know the process, but people who are not being mentored right now, 4 things which I've learned over the last 1.5 years is prepare well when you have that one-on-one meeting with your mentor. Write your questions down. Don't disvalue their time. Be diligent in what they ask you to do. Because all of us need to have someone to whom we need to be accountable to, apart from our spouses, and that's the mentor. Because they will push you to limits which you even don't know that you could go to that limit, right? And I will close with one verse, which is from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. I have fought the good fight. Lord, can you help me? Make this prayer your own prayer. That's why I wrote this. replace the me with your name right now and write it down on the piece of paper. Can you do that? Lord, help Amey raise leaders who surpasses Amey. Lord, give Amey wisdom, courage, and faith to let go when needed. Change the me to your name and write it down. Make it personal. And that's the biblical blueprint of godly succession. I'm happy to take any questions for next 5 minutes if you have, or else I'll hand over to Pastor David. How many of you are blessed by what I said? Super. What are you going to do and change as you walk out in the evening? Write it down now, because my father was a psychologist, so he said, if you don't write it down in next 10 minutes, you'll lose 50% of it. So if you're going to really change something, once you walk out, write it down now so you don't forget. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Can we give the mic?
Hi, Amey.
Yes,
What would be your advice on how to pursue finding a mentor? And then if there is someone in your mind, how would you go about asking them?
Great question. So I know specifically you might be knowing the area you want to get mentored in, and then look at people in your sphere who could do that. Need not be a very high-level person. It could be just a friend as well, but who's better in that area than you. And just go and, check with them. Hi, I'm looking to get mentored in this area. I know you're better than me. Would you be able, or would you consider investing little amount of your daily, monthly time or a weekly time in my life? And just ask that simple question. That's what I did. Because I didn't know how to approach this person. He's a larger-than-life figure. So that's what I did. I just simply and humbly asked, would you consider investing some of your time into my life? So that's the way to do. I think that's what I did. Any other question?
Praise the Lord.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much, brother. Firstly, since it's like another regular conference, I didn't want to come, but by God's
I'm
grace,
glad you came.
by God's grace, that program got rescheduled, and thank Guna who called me and invited, and I could make it today, and it's worth after hearing yours. And my question is, succession, even in church, is more important, very important. Could you help on that importance also?
So to answer your question, I don't think there is a difference between the sacred and secular. Whether it's a church, it's a business, or even it's a family, succession is important everywhere. Even in a family, a father has to make someone successor. In the church, the lead pastor or the leading team has to make someone successor, and the same is for business. So there's nothing different between a business or a church or a family. It's just important for every single one. I don't know if I'm able to answer your question. Thank you. Any other question? All right, thank you for listening to me.